Committee, I think we'll go ahead and get started. I know we have a few people will be coming in late today, but it'll all work out. For those of you listening online, a lot of the testimony will be posted as soon as possible. We had our Thursday canceled up here, and so it was difficult. We didn't have staff to get it posted ahead of time. It'll be posted as soon as possible. With that, we'll open the hearing on Senate Bill 423. Adam, could you? Nope. I think I got the wrong title on mine, but I got the right bill number.
I believe you're correct, Mr. Chairman. This would be, Senate Bill 423 would relate to motor vehicle warranties, would modify how the reasonable allowance is used for calculated non-conforming vehicle warranty refunds. Senate Bill 423, as I stated, would amend how the value of a motor vehicle under warranty is calculated if the manufacturer is going to refund the purchase or lease price of the vehicle. Currently, the refund is calculated as the price, including all collateral charges, less a reasonable allowance for the consumer's use of the vehicle. Under the bill would define collateral charges that would go towards the calculation. Additionally, reasonable allowance was calculated as part of that formula as basically it borrowed the definition from the most recent edition of Your Driving Costs as published by the American Automobile Association. This reference is stricken, and then under the bill, the reasonable allowance would be calculated as equal to the purchase or lease price times the numerator of the miles directly attributable to use of the consumer beyond 15,000 miles, and then the denominator would be 120,000 miles. So it would be essentially a formula. And with that, I'd be happy to stand for any questions.
Committee questions for Adam? Seeing none, we'll turn to our proponents. John Reagan, I believe you're online.
Thank you. Can you all hear me?
We can hear you loud and clear.
Great. Hopefully you have a copy of my testimony, but I will read it to you. Chairman Peterson, Vice Chairman Clahy, Ranking Minority Member Hawk, and Honorable Committee members. My name is John Reagan, a lifetime Kansas resident. My wife, Jennifer, and I recently had the misfortune of dealing with a lemon vehicle sold to us by General Motors. After nearly 10 months of trips to our local GM dealership for the same issue, which was electrical, we were relieved when GM finally agreed to buy back our vehicle. However, the reasonable allowance included in the statute for using the car when it wasn't in the shop left us stunned. We drove the car approximately 1,000 miles over 2 months before a series of electrical problems began occurring. We then drove it another 3,000 miles over the next 9 months between trips to the shop. The majority of these miles were driven by me in order to get the electrical issues to reoccur so they could be documented to meet the lemon law requirements, currently Kansas Statute 50-645. The electric issues would arise between 2 and 250 miles between trips to the shop to have the error codes reset. The current statute points to a reasonable allowance, which is determined by the American Automobile Association. The problem with this cost per mile calculations are mainly twofold. First, includes items General Motors never paid for, such as fuel, insurance, and maintenance. And the depreciation charge, which is the biggest component of the use fee, is based on a 70,000 mile useful life of a vehicle. The allowance for a car totaled 0.7224 cents per mile, or $3,129.57. We are proposing eliminating the use of the AAA's calculation and instead implementing a more straightforward calculation based on a 120,000 mile useful life and including the reimbursement of other purchase-related expenses such as insurance and property and sales tax. This is similar to statutes in other states such as Oklahoma. We also propose limiting the in-use miles to those driven by the buyer until the unrepairable issue is first identified or manifests itself. We need the legislature's help so that other families do not get legally ripped off by use of the current allowance calculation. Thank you for your help in this matter, and I hope you will pass out Bill SB 423 favorable for passage. Thank you.
Committee questions for John? Senator Hawk.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. John, thank you for being here virtually in our committee. I wanted to get clear about something you said in your testimony. So you got a replacement car from General Motors, is that correct?
No, they purchased the vehicle back.
And so from what you paid for the car, you got some $3,129 less
That was,
than,
yes, correct.
and ballparky, what was your car worth when you bought it?
24,000.
20, so you got right around 21,000 when you turned it
Correct.
back in? Okay,
So
thank you,
we were
appreciate it.
charged about 10% or more than 10% of the total purchase price is what we paid, even though we'd only driven it 1,000 miles carefree.
And what was the total amount of time? Did you say 9 months or was it closer to 10 months?
Between when we first got the vehicle and the electrical issues first started, it was about 2 months, but it took 9 months to get like 9 trips to the shop to qualify under the Kansas lemon law, because you have to give the dealership ample time to fix the problem. And it took that long for them to decide they could not fix the problem, even though they tried multiple times.
And the car was a new car?
Correct.
Okay. And what year was the car?
2018.
2018. And
So
this happened a little over 3 years ago?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Committee, further questions for John?
Mr. Chair, I have one online.
Go ahead, Senator Pittman.
Thank you. John, thanks for testifying today. Unfortunately, the same situation happened to my in-laws, and it was very hard to recoup. There was a lot of negotiation on the sales tax piece of this, as well as the insurance. Did you have similar issues when you were going through this?
Yes. Fortunately, I'm from my job experience, I'm used to dealing with contracts and laws, so I was able to work with the GM dealership or the GM representative. At first, they did not want to include the insurance and taxes, but it didn't take them too long to come around to determining that they should. So those items were included in the reimbursement.
And how much was the depreciation? Did you say it was three? Was it just depreciation? That was the $3,000.
No, that was the $3,100 was the calculation based on the AAA's
right.
use calculation, which includes depreciation, fuel, maintenance,
Got it.
all that stuff that GM never paid for, and so should not be included in the calculation anyway.
All right. Thank you so much, John, for coming and testifying.
Thank you.
Committee, further questions? Hearing none, is there any other proponents? Seeing none, we'll turn our attention to the opponents. First up, we have Leighton Yates with the Alliance for Automotive Innovation.
Good morning,
Are
Mr.
you
Chair.
online?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I can hear you fine. Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Thank you for the time to express some of our concerns and opposition to Senate Bill 423. Currently, the existing limit law requires that an OEM provide a consumer with a refund of the full purchase price or lease price of the vehicle, and that includes all collateral charges and also reasonable allowance for the consumer's use of the vehicle. The bill as written today attempts to define those two concepts in a way that we do not think is logical. First, we'll start with the collateral charges. It adds some confusing concepts. Initially, it includes the value of gas that's used in a diagnosis test drive. We believe that this is a de minimis value, and it's really unclear why it's included in this bill. It also defines collateral charges to include rental vehicles. One, if it's included in the warranty agreement, or if it's improved by the OEM or its dealer. It's confusing to us because if it was in the warranty agreement and approved by the dealer or the OEM, there would not be any charges incurred by the customer or the consumer in that scenario. So what's left in the bill is the collateral charges, which would be the taxes and the towing. And those don't seem necessary to spell out in legislation that's before you today. A last issue to point out is the reasonable use offset. The current law, as was pointed out by Mr. Reagan, is based on the AAA driving cost publication, and that includes a number of factors to find that number total. But if the state were to switch to a fraction of miles driven divided by the useful life of the vehicle, then it should do something more in line with other states, more common. The language in this bill essentially nullifies and validates the concept of the offset of reasonable use by making the first 15,000 miles not even apply. That's because the limit law as it is right now is set for a 12-month period, and most Kansans drive about 15,000 miles in a year anyways. So it would be pretty ineffective. Those are our main points of opposition. Lincoln, I thank you for your time to express our concerns, and we ask that you do not pass Senate Bill 423.
Committee, do we have any questions for Leighton? Seeing none, thank you.
I have a
Next
question,
up, we
sir.
have,
This is John. So to address a couple of points that the previous gentleman raised, the gas cost for test driving, we included because we had to drive the vehicle approximately 3,000 miles test driving because this electrical issue wouldn't occur right away. It would be, like I said in my testimony, between 2 and 250 miles before it happened again. So we incurred quite a bit of expense in test driving. The second point he raised was the coverage of rental vehicles. I had emails approving our renting of a vehicle during a lengthy period where the vehicle is in GM shop. I turned in the invoice to GM as requested. They denied the rental after a month of renting, which stuck us with a almost $850 rental bill. After going through the Kansas Attorney General, they were able to help us work with GM and convince GM that they were using deceptive practices to deny our rental, and it was eventually reimbursed about 2 months ago. So that was why that was included in the proposed legislation.
John, the questions are for the committee. If you want to submit any additional information, we would appreciate you just to send a letter to the committee. The committee's asking questions of the opponents right now, but thank you.
Thank you. I apologize. Thank you.
Next up, we have Jeff Perry. Jeff, are you online?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I am. Hopefully you can see and hear me now. So good morning, Chair Peterson, members of the committee, and thank you for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Jeff Perry. I'm the Director of Public Policy for General Motors. I'll begin by saying that I am not personally familiar with any of Mr. Reagan's case. And so, Mr. Reagan, on behalf of GM, I apologize if this has been a rough road for you. That isn't certainly, I know the people that operate that department. It certainly isn't our intention to ever be that problematic for our customers. So I do apologize to you that you've had to go through this. And I will raise some of the things that you've mentioned today to those folks when I get back in town, Detroit. As far as testimony goes, I do echo the comments of the Auto Alliance. And I think it's not a matter of not wanting to make customers whole for the problems that they are suffering and the expenses that they're incurring during warranty issues with their vehicle. I think our concerns largely stem around what is traditional or normal in state lemon laws, and unfortunately the way that this bill is actually worded would require significant work to make it align with what is the norm across the country. I think Leighton laid out some of the issues regarding the gas, which is not normal, and I think the way that this is written in terms of test driving is more just problematic because it's not really defined. We don't know what test driving means. When do you start counting? How do you measure it? Who measures it? There's a lot of unknown circumstances here in terms of how you document that. I think the replacement cost for the rental vehicle under the warranty, and I want to speak back to Mr. Rakin on this point again. I apologize if you were promised a vehicle or committed a vehicle by us under the warranty through the problems that you were having. I'm not sure why that wasn't covered. That's a specific point that I'm going to take back and ask our people about. So it sounds like your case was is a little bit older. So I'll probably maybe reach out and get some of your information so I can find those details. But hopefully we can get to the bottom of some of that. And I think largely the way this is defined, I think we want to do this the right way if we're going to do these changes to the Kansas lemon law. A lot of what's defined here, these are not actually collateral charges. Collateral charges typically are defined as the cost incurred in purchasing the vehicle. A lot of what's defined here are actually consequential damages. And it does make a difference in the conversation and in the ultimate calculation of how those things are accounted for. I think, if anything, we would just like to talk a little bit more about getting the language correct here and maybe working through some of these provisions where that's possible. Obviously, towing costs would not be a problem and should have been covered if there was towing involved related to the issue. As far as the change from the current law in Kansas uses the AAA calculation of a denominator of 75,000 miles for the calculation of the mileage offsets for use of the vehicle. And admittedly, that is probably on the low end of the spectrum currently under most state laws. The norm across the country is 100,000 miles, and I would say that the minority of other states on the high end are at 120,000. Quite honestly, for General Motors, the 120,000 versus 100,000 isn't so much our issue. I think it should be 100,000 because that's kind of where all of the majority of other states have landed. But that's not so much the concern that we have here. It's that no other state that we're aware of allows a free use period of 15,000 miles. Essentially, the carve out of 15,000 miles of free use, so the first 15,000 miles here, combined with the 12-month Kansas lemon law rights period, effectively gives consumers in the state of Kansas the free use of a vehicle for the first year. And Mr. Reagan, the following comment is not in any way aimed at you. You clearly had a serious, real problem. It is our experience as a manufacturer across the country that language that creates 15,000 free miles over the first year of a vehicle is the exact type of language that plaintiffs' counsels use to fabricate repairs. And we have instances across the country where consumers go in and specifically say they have a problem early on, and then within a year they get out of the vehicle. I think what may have been intended here, and this would be more commonplace in state lemon laws, is First off, Kansas doesn't have a mileage cap on its lemon law rights period. It's 12 months, first 12 months of ownership of the vehicle. If the intention here was to put a mileage provision in there, then make it read that the first 12 months for 15,000 miles, that's a different approach. And I think what is also commonplace in other states would be that, for example, it might be 12 months in the state of Kansas, or that you only count the usage up to the first repair attempt. And I think as I was reading this, that may have been the intention here. But I can't be sure because obviously I haven't been able to get into the state to have a conversation on the bill with anybody. But we're certainly open to more conversation about that and see if we can land in a reasonable place on this bill. And Mr. Reagan, again, I apologize on behalf of General Motors. If you are open to providing information to me so I can find your case file and have further conversations with our folks, I am more than happy to look into that for you. That'll be the end of my testimony. Thank you very much today.
Committee, questions for John?
Mr. Chair, one online.
Go ahead, Senator Pittman.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Perry, for coming in here, and entirely sympathetic with what you just went through. Understanding that a 15,000 carve out would effectively allow people to drive a car, try to find something wrong with it, claim the warranty, and cause quite a few issues with the firm. And I really do appreciate the honesty of the 100,000 versus the 70,000, and kind of marking where Kansas lays inside of that spectrum of mileage. Let me ask you one question though, and that is, how do we hold someone harmless, such as Mr. Reagan, when he, with electrical issues, and we have so many different new cars out there that do have different sophisticated electronics, and understanding that sometimes those systems we have a hard time diagnosing those systems. And then when we reset the codes inside, they do take a while to kick in. How do we hold someone harmless who is like Mr. Reagan, trying to find the codes and to trigger the codes so that those things can happen? How it sounds like we're going to penalize them for finding the issue. Like, there's no way around that if we take 3,000, 4,000, or 5,000 miles off of it as they try and find the issue in the lemon law, or if the issue manifests itself, I guess that's a better way to say it, over a 4,000 or 5,000 mile period, they're naturally going to have less as a in the warranty than if they had been held whole. And so that does present a problem. I don't know how big of a problem it is, and maybe that's just the way of life, but do you have any comments on that?
Sure. Yeah. Actually, as I was when I was speaking, one of the things I mentioned was that I think maybe a more common way of approaching the issue, instead of just giving a blanket free 15,000 miles, like I said, would be to create the cutoff at the first repair. So I think Reagan indicated it was around 1,000 miles, and so in his case, the usage clock would have stopped at 1,000 miles.
Got it.
Further questions for Jeff? Seeing none, thank you. Is there any further opponents? Any neutrals? We'll close the hearing on Senate Bill 423 and turn our attention to Senate Bill 506. Adam, could you give us a briefing?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senate Bill 506 would provide for a new distinctive license plate, the North Central Kansas Down Syndrome Society license plate. The plate would be subject to the $250 initial plate commitment and payment up to $5,000 in development costs as required by law. The North Central Kansas Down Syndrome Society, with the division's approval, would be able to assist with the design of the plate. And this organization will be able to set a royalty fee in the amount of $25 up to $100. and such fees would go towards the support of the North Central Kansas Down Syndrome Society. And with that, I'd be happy to stand for any questions.
Committee, any questions for Adam? Senator Hawk?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is this the same production and financial requirements for all other distinctive license plates?
Yes, it is.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Committee, further questions for Adam? Seeing none, thank you, Adam. We'll turn to our proponents. Sheila Tomman, are you online? Oh, excellent. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Sheila Tolman, and while I'm here to talk about a license plate, I first want to say thank you. I'm not just a mom that is passionate about her son with Down syndrome, but I'm also the county clerk of Cloud County. That gives me a little bit of an idea of the shoes that you're filling sitting here. And I've also been a friend of Senator Bowers for over 25 years, and I talk to her often. That gives me a little bit more insight of what the shoes you're filling here are about. So thank you. Thank you for showing up, for stepping up, for being passionate about making a difference in the great state of this great state. This time, 14 years ago, I was having a normal pregnancy. That May, I had a normal delivery. Sorry. That May, I had a normal delivery, and within 24 hours, our son Isaac went home. When he was 3 days old, he was life-flighted to Wichita, and on day 8, he was diagnosed with trisomy 21, better known as Down syndrome. The doctor walked out the door. I picked up Isaac, and I cried. I certainly didn't know anything about Down syndrome, and I could only recall 2 people in my life that had a disability, and they both need significant care. Later that day, a mom from the Down Syndrome Society of Wichita, who had a 10-year-old with Down syndrome, came to talk to us. She told me that our life was going to be incredible. There would be challenges, but our life had just changed for the better. Honestly, I did not believe her. She didn't know the first thing about our life and how this diagnosis was going to change the entire dynamic. Within a couple of weeks, a mom of a 7-year-old from the North Central Kansas Down Syndrome Society came to visit me. She basically told me the same thing as the first mom. Within weeks, I learned that I had an uncle that did his thesis on Down syndrome and was excited for our journey. I started seeing people with Down syndrome places I went and meeting people that knew people with Down syndrome. Within 6 months, I had gone to 2 Down syndrome awareness walks that are called Buddy Walks. I began to understand what those moms were talking about. Fast forward, I can't imagine our life without Isaac and our Down syndrome tribe of the lucky few. The phrase the lucky few started as something that came from another mom's heart when she was talking about her 2 children with Down syndrome, and is exactly how I feel about my life. Don't get me wrong, it hasn't been all peaches and cream. There's been challenges and there's been struggles, but the entire dynamic of our life, it did change. And just as those moms said, it's been for the better. A Kansas Down syndrome tag has been on my mind for some time now. In our treasurer's office, our treasurer has samples of all the tags available in Kansas hanging on her wall. The wall is pretty full. She recently received new tags, and it was then I decided that there needed to be a Down syndrome tag to join them. I messaged Senator Bowers, and we got the wheels turning. Later in January, the board of the North Central Kansas Down Syndrome Society met and voted to be the host agency to financially support the tag. 3 weeks ago, we posted a message to our society families, encouraging them to share this exciting possibility with the more of the lucky few tribe across the state. In those 3 weeks, we have had more than 100 families from 47 different Kansas counties say, yes, I want a Down syndrome license plate. Maybe you're thinking 100 isn't 250. Those 100 want nearly 100 plates, but we're not done reaching out. In 2020, 41 babies were born in Kansas with Down syndrome. In 2019, there were 58. From 2014 to 2018, there were 211 live births. Using those 7 years as an average, that calculates out to more than 1,300 individuals with Down syndrome living in Kansas. Kansas has multiple agencies supporting disabilities in itself, and they have multiple agencies supporting individuals with just Down syndrome and their families, including the North Central Kansas Down Syndrome Society, the Down Syndrome Society of Wichita, the Northwest Kansas Down Syndrome Society, the Flint Hills Down Syndrome Families Group, Kansas and Down Syndrome Support, Down Syndrome Innovations, and the Southeast Kansas Down Syndrome Society. There is a support group in nearly every area of Kansas because these families are passionate about spreading awareness. A portion of the mission for all these groups are to provide services that educate, connect, and advocate for individuals with Down syndrome, and to ensure full potential in community life. That new family driving home from the doctor's office or the hospital, and they seeing a car in front of them with a Down syndrome license plate on it, it's going to send a message that they are not alone, and that maybe, just maybe, it's going to be okay. To families like ours who have been on this journey for quite some time, it gives us another opportunity to voice support for our families and friends who have experience with Down syndrome, to raise awareness and improve the public attitudes and the acceptance of those with Down syndrome. A quick Google search tells me that at least 12 other states, including Oklahoma and Kansas, have a Down syndrome license plate. I ask you today, on behalf of my son and all the sons and daughters in this great state and their families, to support our missions and allow us to spread awareness and acceptance everywhere we drive.
Committee, questions for Sheila?
One question, Mr. Chair.
Senator Pittman.
First off, Sheila, I want to tell you how much I appreciate you bringing this up. I think license plates like this really lift up the communities like the one you're talking about, and I think it's a very appropriate use of those. One thing you said in your testimony, though, at the very end was that you noted 12 states have a Down syndrome license plate, and then you said Oklahoma and Kansas. I think I might have misheard you there. So maybe
Oklahoma and Nebraska, sorry.
Nebraska. Thank you so much. Just want to make sure I heard it right.
Senator Hawk.
Thank you again for bringing this and for your excellent testimony. Do you have a tentative design on your plate yet?
We do not.
Okay, it'll be interested to see what that looks like. And I've had another family member who did a distinctive license plate for their child and another disability, and I think that's been a very positive experience for them. So excited to see you doing this for the other families so they might have the same experience that you've had. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator Bowers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Sheila. First of all, I want to say when she said Kansas versus Nebraska, she's a Nebraska girl, so living in Kansas, 3 decades. So that clarifies that. So Kansas, Nebraska, interchangeable. But my question would be for Adam, so Adam, when we first prepared this tag would be for all of Kansas, and we have how we presented it to you to write North Central Kansas. Is that a problem with, it's statewide, should we have an amendment to remove North Central?
I believe would be the sponsoring agency, and that would be it'd be their plate. The design they could agree with however they'd want with the division, so it's kind of a discretionary call. I mean, their plate doesn't necessarily have to state, I don't think, North Central. It could state whatever. They would just be the sponsoring organization. If you wanted to refer to it as a different, quote unquote, different type name plate, you could do that, but I don't think it presents any issues.
Okay.
That would just be.
I just wanted to see if we needed to clear, if that wasn't clear, it's all of Kansas, but it's starting from North Central Kansas, so, okay. So in your opinion, it's fine as it is? It would be does it need clarified?
Let me take a quick look at it and then
Okay.
back to you.
Thanks, Adam, and thanks for working on that with us. Lots of emails back and forth. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Committee, further questions?
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Tyson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I would ask of the conferees if they would be acceptable to an amendment nothing to harm this bill or hurt this bill, but to clean up some legislation that was passed last year on license plates, on custom plates, if that would be okay for them.
I'm seeing a head nod, yes. I think she probably would like to have a little more detail on that, Senator.
Absolutely. I'll be glad to work with them. We had some language last year on changing the custom plate back to the old fashioned windmill and an option on the background. And we just want to make sure, I've heard that it didn't get quite implemented as we thought. So we'd just like to clean that up a little.
Might check on that and work with the conferees.
Thank you.
Further questions? Seeing none. Oh, Senator Dietrich, did you have a question?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So is the North Central Down Syndrome Society a 501c3? Yes. And are there several across the state? If you said that, I missed it.
Yes, there's almost a group in every section of the state, except for the Southwest. And there was a group there. I just haven't found that they're very active at this point.
Is there a statewide, though, just one state?
It's not one statewide.
Not one statewide. Okay, thank you. Mm-hmm.
Committee, further questions? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any further proponents wishing to speak? Are there any opponents? Are there any neutrals? We'll close the hearing on Senate Bill 506. And as I said before, committee, we will try and get most of the documents posted as soon as possible. There was some delay when they shut our great staff down on Thursday. It was a little difficult for people to get their PDFs in on time. We'll make that happen. With that, we are meeting tomorrow, and we are adjourned.